Guys, guess what? Guess what? I'm done. I'm really done. It's finally over. Yeah, um, as you can see, I've painted the Aile Striker. I've painted the rest of the accessories. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to clear all this off of my nice clean cutting mat that I totally paint all my stuff on and managed to keep it this clean somehow. And we're going to take a look at what I did, one thing at a time, and then I'm going to put it together. And then we're going to take a look at what it looks like on the suit. Can't wait to get started. So, accessories. What are we going to start with? These guys, or as I call them, the armored Schneiders. Um, I'm not going to explain. If you speak German, then you're probably going to agree with me that these things have a silly name, but it doesn't matter. Rambo knives, whatever you want to call them. I complained quite a bit about these in my original build review of the Strike because they actually come molded on the same sprue as the hands, which means they're all molded as one piece. And it's really stupid because it's really difficult to paint them. And if you folded these now, they look terrible. But what I ended up doing, basically just because it sort of bugged me that there was something I hadn't painted, which there still is, by the way. It's called the Sky Grasper. I had some new stuff that I wanted to try anyway. So what I ended up doing was that I primed these with Vallejo's gloss black primer, which I sort of discovered as I was working on this build and then couldn't use because I'd already started. And then I hand painted the blade with this stuff, Citadel lead belcher or silver, you know. And I gotta say, um, it works really well with the weathering and the top coat on it. You really can't tell that these aren't airbrushed. One of them came out a little more streaky than the other, and now I can't tell which one anymore. So I guess that really tells you everything you need to know. Um, so I did that. I also painted these details here with the same color. Dry brushed Tamiya chrome, silver, and rust on the handle, white and rust on the blade. Top coated it all semi-gloss as per usual, and done. Probably never going to use these, and I can't fold them anymore now, so I can't store them in the side skirts, but they came out looking pretty cool. Next, the beam sabers. Let's use this one first. So while I was painting other things, specs. While I was painting other things, at some point I glanced over at the sprue with the beam saber effect parts on it, and it just bugged me how toy-like and unpainted these looked. And I thought, you know what, this is another thing I'm probably never actually going to use to display the kit with, so I might as well see what I can do with them. So I decided that I was going to do sort of a gradient from yellow to purple. Now the problem is, if you paint clear yellow on a clear red part, here's what happens. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Like if you squinted at it and thought of fairies, you could sort of tell it. Then it sort of looked slightly orange, but it really didn't. So I ended up painting it with solid yellow instead, sort of mist coating it. And I don't know if the paint was too thick or I just wasn't being careful enough, but I got a lot of specks here. It's worse on this one. It sort of almost looks like it's some sort of weird glowy effect that I was going for, but it's not. I just wasn't handling the paint very well. But I actually kind of like the way this looks, and I might do it again in the future. I also wanted it to go to sort of a cooler color at the tip, and so I painted this clear blue, which worked fine because it's darker than the red that the part is molded in. But honestly, I think I probably should have just done this and left well enough alone, because now it looks a little too colorful for my tastes. But it came out pretty cool. And sort of if you hold it up against a light source, like I can't show you this right now, but if you hold it up against the light, the yellow is actually still somewhat transparent because it's only mist coated. So that worked out pretty well. The beam sabers, nothing too out of the ordinary going on here except for a terrible sprue scar that I didn't fix. This is pre-shaded, base coated, gunk washed. I did some heat streaking with Tamiya flat black here. I always do this on my beam sabers because beam saber blades cause heat streaks. Science. I also painted these little bits here gunmetal, but because of the gunk wash here, which I kind of left a lot because I thought it made sense that this would be dirty. You can't really tell anymore. Looks okay though. So let's take a quick look what this looks like when you put it together. Yeah, there's a beam saber. Pretty happy with this. Gonna eventually try to see what it looks like when I do a photo shoot with the kit, but not today. So, beam sabers, and now, of course, the big one, the Grand Slam sword. Like the other accessories don't have dumb enough names. Yeah, so basically, I wanted to paint this just cause. And so what I did was I painted the handle and then I put it together to do the weathering. And when I put the blade back on in its original chrome plated form, it was just awful. I hadn't even done any weathering on the blade yet. What's this? There's some stuff stuck in here. Weird. I hadn't even done any weathering on the handle yet, and it already just looked completely mismatched with the chrome plated blade. It was like toy blade model kit handle. And so I said, you know what? I don't really like this thing anyway because what is that? You know, the handle. I mean, it works. The kit can grab it, but it doesn't look like anything. You know, it has these grooves here that for the hands to plug into, and this is basically ratcheting so that you can move it up and down, and you just see all that, and the handle itself doesn't do anything. It just doesn't look good. Anyway, I digress. My point is, I figured since I don't really particularly like this sword anyway, I thought I might as well try to strip the chrome off the blade and see if I can pull that off, which after 3 attempts I finally did with a concentrated car degreaser. Worked a charm though, because as you can see, the part is completely undamaged and the chrome's gone. And then what I did was, figured now if I'm experimenting, I might as well go all out, right? So I primed it with the same gloss black primer that I used on the knives. Then I painted it Tamiya gunmetal on the whole thing. And then I did sort of a gradient with gold from here to here, which is actually causing an effect here that you guys probably don't notice, but I know that it's there. Because I left that, and then I painted over everything with chrome silver. And so now what that did is that the blade is actually slightly lighter here than it is here. And depending on what angle you look at it from and how the light hits it, it gives it this sort of weird iridescent quality that sort of tricks your eye into thinking that it's changing color, but it's really not. It just has a gradient under there, and the reflection is confusing your brain, basically. And then I just dry brushed all over it with, gunmetal, silver, rust, and white, if I remember correctly. Oh yeah, and I filled this groove here with India ink, just plain India ink. Yeah, and then I top coated it, and it's done. This has the same weathering as all the other gunmetal stuff. I don't think I need to get into that again. This is hand painted. Didn't come out that great. I probably should have masked and airbrushed that, but oh well. Anyway, I actually really like how this came out, especially sort of turning it around now and seeing how sort of the light plays with it. So I don't know. I've been looking at Warhammer miniatures. If I get something with a really big sword, maybe I'll use it there. So anyway, that's the accessories. Let's get to the Aile Striker. All right, so I'm just going to follow the instructions. So we're going to build the top part with the wings first, and I'm going in cold here, and I have no idea if some of the pre-assembled stuff I've done here is even going to work, but I guess we're going to find out. I didn't really do anything particularly new here except for the black parts, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Otherwise, I mean, this thing had to match the Aile Striker. I mean, it had to match the suit. It is the Aile Striker, numbnuts. So nothing new here. This is just solid gunmetal. I did absolutely nothing to it because the only thing you can see is these krills. So these are very lightly dry brushed with silver, and that's all I did to them. Everything else is completely hidden. So I put these on first. All of the red parts, as you can see, are done with the same red and red-brown mix from Tamiya. They are gunk wash with Starship filth, and I did a little bit of chipping here with silver and rust. Same as on the suit. Now, this needs to face forward. Okay, polycap here and polycap here. And now here's where it gets interesting. Let me see if this works first, and then I'll tell you about the wings, because the instructions tell you to just put this little mechanism in here. But as you can see, I've got the wing already attached to it because I wanted to have it all assembled when I was doing the weathering. And so now I have to see if it's going to be possible to put this together without having to take it apart again. So far, it looks like we're okay. All right, yeah, so that's in. Okay, so let me tell you a little about the wings. First of all, of course, it's barely visible anymore, but the red parts have pre-shading under all of the panel lines. Then I painted them with the red, brown, and red mix from Tamiya that I used everywhere. Water slide decals. I dry brushed edge highlights, which I think next time I do this, I need to use a lighter color than I used here. It's barely visible. You can kind of see it at the front here if you squint and you know that it's there. And then I did, scratches with silver, and I don't think there's any rust here, but I did use rust in a few places. Because typically what I do is just when one of the, I shouldn't say scratches, chipping. When one of the chips turns out a bit bigger, then I put a little bit of rust there. I think I already explained that with the main mobile suit. Now my problem with the Aile Striker was these black parts. See, because I thought about what I was going to do with the black on this thing for a pretty long time, because see, it's the parts are molded in the same color as the inner frame on the suit itself, right? So what I did with those is that I painted them gunmetal, but following the color scheme I'd come up with, gunmetal is inner frame, and this is obviously, these are not inner frame parts, and so I had to come up with something else. And now this is not quite snug. Okay, now it's snug. All right. Here we go. That's better, I think. Yeah. So anyway, I had to come up with a color for the black, for these black parts, which ended up being black, as you can see. So I painted them black, and then I looked at them, and I looked at the red parts next to them, and I knew that especially on the wings, of course, they were going to be right next to one another, and I thought, man, this looks completely mismatched. This just doesn't look good. I have to do something about these black pieces. And so I thought about what to do. And normally what I would do with black is just dry brush silver all over it. But I didn't want to do that here because it gives you too much of a beat up and weathered appearance, way more weathered than I was going for with this kit. So I had to come up with something else. And what that ended up being is I did a gunk wash on these with, of course, the gunk wash on the red is Starship Filth. But what I ended up doing on these is I did a gunk wash with Ghost Gray, it's called. And that's all this gray color that you see and the panel lines and the recesses. Some of this happened when I was dry brushing highlights, but most of it is left over from the gunk wash, and it ended up looking just perfect. Just somewhere between dust that has collected and sun bleached. I'm really, really happy with how that worked out. Definitely going to be using this trick again. Of course, I could have also airbrushed highlights in sort of dark gray, and that would have solved that problem too. But I actually kind of like how this came out. So yeah, that's what I did with the black. Now, up next, we have these pieces on the side and the flaps that go on the thrusters. Now on these here, you see this sort of this shape here, these fins or whatever you want to call those. To me, it's obvious that these mimic the ones on the boosters here. And since that's the case, I painted them titanium gold because that's what I paint all the gold parts. So that's what I did there. Now with these flaps here, they have different parts numbers. I'm just sort of trying to figure out which ones I want to use here, which ones look nice from up top. They have different part numbers, but I just checked them again. They look to be completely identical, and I mean completely. So I don't know. I really think it doesn't matter which ones I put in here. But like I said, I'm going in cold. And we're about to find out if I'm screwing this up. Yeah, I'm actually realizing they're not completely symmetrical, are they? Hold on, let me stop the camera real quick and figure this out. Whew, okay, so that's done. Yeah, this is difficult. First of all, I did realize that I think these flaps are angled slightly upward, or at least that's the way I put them in now, and they're actually not completely symmetrical because the pegs are pointing in the right direction to get them to fit that way. And also getting these outside pieces with these gold fins on them in place with the wings already there was pretty fiddly. So I did that off camera. You have to be, if you're going to do this, you have to be really careful. You can actually see here, there's a slight bead from, I broke this off, and the bead here is from gluing it back on. Tommy Extra Thin is made of magic, of course, and will fix just about anything, but I did break that part, so be careful. Now, let's get the rest of this stuff on here. Hopefully this will be easy from here on out. Except, of course, that wing's in the way. That is the correct part, but it doesn't seem to want to fit. You know what? Let's do this side. Sometimes, it's just because of the paint. The parts don't quite fit anymore. And then you have to kind of mess around with them a bit to get things to fit. I do seem to be having a problem here, though, in that it won't work. Of course, the wing's in the way again. I really wish I hadn't done that. There's like one streak on the between the two wings. There's one streak on the whole thing that actually goes across the black and the red. And that one streak is basically the reason why I'm dealing with this now. Okay, now we got it. Of course, you know, I'm also trying to get this in place without scratching it on the wing, because that'll look crappy. Oh man, this is tight now. Get this in there without breaking off that flap at the top. Okay, here we go. Looks pretty nifty. Get this wing out of the way a little more like I did on the other side. Yeah, definitely works better on that side than on this one. I'll press this together a little harder. Oh, here we go. Now it fits just fine. Okay. Quick thing I wanted to show you. The boosters here, of course, are basically screaming to be detailed, so that you can pick out the small details when you're looking through these flaps. And I didn't want to do gold because it just struck me as obvious that they had to be dirty, right? So I dry brushed silver along the edges and dabbed some black in there to give them a little more depth. But if you look at this now, it didn't really work all that well. So if you're going to do this yourself, just go with gold like everyone else. Other than that, looking good. So, what's next? Oh, yeah, I have to talk about this, of course. These two parts, especially this one, you can see here all the red is masked off and airbrushed with the same color I used on the wings. Because to be honest, I also put some decals on here that aren't in the instructions, because I just felt like for a perfect grade and for how detailed the suit itself looks, honestly, the Aile Striker, I really like the proportions. It's excellent as far as its proportions go, but it's really lacking in the detail department. So I added this. I also did these flaps here because I was like, all the other air intake flaps are red. Why not these and these and these? And this is also masked and painted and heat streaked with dry brushing. Just kind of seemed obvious that needed to be done, to be honest. So let's get this in place here. Okay, that's still, sorry, I'll hold this up so close to the camera, it's probably completely out of focus, but that still fits. This still seems to fit as well. Clickety clack. All right, there's a bit too much of the gunmetal showing through here, I think, but it's okay. Sorry, I mentioned this in the Zoids review that I posted yesterday. When you paint these parts, they can go just a little, I don't know, squishy, and it becomes difficult to figure out whether you're actually clicking something in place correctly or or you're about to make a horrible mistake and break something. Speaking of horrible mistakes, I think I'm not going to be able to get this on here without taking off the red part of the wing. Yeah, all right, here I go and stop the camera again. And we're back. Yeah, I ended up having to take the red parts off of the wings to get these parts on the side here with the air intake. Gotta say though, this red with the red in the back here and the red on the wing, that goes together much better than I thought it would. This looks, yeah, that was a good idea. That was definitely a good idea. Should have dry brushed these a little more. Okay, now the last thing we are going to do is put these lights in place. Let me just check one last time where the blue goes and where the red goes, and yes, I'm doing it backwards. Red goes on, blue goes on this side. Hopefully these will still fit. Yeah. Oh man, that looks okay. See, I was a little worried about what these were going to look like, because normally what I would do is, of course, you know, these are just completely clear plastic, in case you're not familiar with the kit. Whoops, sorry, microphone cable. And so I painted them with Tamiya clear paints. And normally what I would do is paint them silver on the inside, or paint this silver. But I knew, and it's kind of confirming it right now when I'm having to click them on with a lot of force. I knew if I painted silver on the inside here, it was just going to get scraped off and potentially look crappy. And so I didn't do that. And now that they're in place, I have to say, I seriously doubt that these would look significantly better with silver on the inside. The contrast of like the gloss finish on these parts and the matte finish on the rest of the wings is already making them pop quite enough. They look very shiny. Okay, that's the top part of the Aile Striker. I don't think there's anything else here that I need to talk about. Up next are the boosters. Let's take a look at those. So here are the inside parts. These are the tips. Outer hull boosters and these wing pieces. Right. Okay. Now, what do we need to talk about? We need to talk about, first of all, that on one of these, I think is this one. This peg here looks pretty big, fat, and sturdy, right? Yeah, it clicks into a polycap. When I took this part off for painting, this snapped right off. And actually, I have no idea if it's going to hold up now. We're about to find out. So one thing at a time. What do we do here? Of course, you know, pre-shading, gunk washing. This is why it's so dirty on the inside here. Pre-shading, gunk washing, chipping, black gunk wash chips. I've talked about all of that before already. These are gunmetal with dry brushing. Here, what I did is I had the same problem with these boosters on the back here as I did on the part with the wings, where I wanted to make the edges pop, but the dry brushing didn't really seem to do its job. This is titanium gold because these are yellow. And then here, this stripe here where I painted these gold bits, and the same thing here, actually shows through gaps in the outer armor. And so I decided to do the same thing here that I had done on the suit itself, which is to paint a little bit of this detail so that it looks busy under there, basically. So the instructions are telling me that the first thing I'm supposed to do is put these together. So let's do that. And we have the usual nice combination of, is this supposed to stick out like that? I guess. I actually don't remember. The usual combination of shiny gunmetal and dull matte coated outer frame, outer armor, which I just always love. This is exactly what I was hoping this would look like. Let's do the other two. Pop. Of course, you know, the one thing that sucks about working this way is that you don't get to see what it all looks like until the very, very end. Which is one reason why I was a little antsy to get this done today and didn't actually let the top coat cure overnight. But I've done that plenty of times before and it's never been a problem. So, okay. Everything all at once, I guess. So here's another like extra decal that isn't really supposed to be on there, but I don't care. This badly needed some extra detail. Oh man, this is tight. I knew this was going to be a problem. Okay, here we go. Clickety clack. The second one, I hope this stuff is symmetrical, by the way. I'm actually not sure. I just put the decals on opposite sides and hoped for the best. Okay, so I have to push this in like totally straight, otherwise it won't work. Okay, now this back part here, let's see, this is outside. Goes on like this, right? Yeah, so which one do I like better? This one. Do you guys do that too? Like when you have two identical parts, sort of decide which one worked out better and then put that one on, so the nice. So, you know, you're looking at its good side basically. Okay, here we go. Gold and gunmetal peeking through the gap here. This is almost a little too intense actually. Okay, this one on this side. I have to say, man, the parts for these boosters, they were already a tight fit when I put them, when I just snap fitted everything. And I actually modified some stuff just so I could sort of barely pry it apart again. And it's still just, it's such a tight fit. Okay, so this one goes on like, this is up, right? Yeah, okay, like this. Okay. This booster here, I forgot to talk about that. I really wish this was visible. Look at all the nice detail here. And you don't see it ever unless you're doing like a partially disassembled build, which is of course what this is there for, in case you want to display this, you know, like in the hangar with this stuff sort of taken apart. But other than, unless you're going to do that, you're never going to see it, which is also why I didn't detail paint it at all. Okay. This just somehow doesn't look 100% correct, but I don't see how it could possibly go together any other way. because from this angle, it's completely symmetrical. So yeah, I'm just imagining things. All right, I think this is the broken one. So we're about to find out if it's really fixed. Oh man, tight, tight, tight. Okay, in you go. Yeah, it moves a little, but as far as I'm concerned, this is just never coming out again. Okay, this one goes on the bottom, like that, and this one here. That went in a little deeper than the other one for some reason. Painting, folks. I mean, I completely, like, I'm never leaving another one of these kits unpainted, but sometimes the parts fit issues you have afterwards. And I'm really careful about this stuff, I'd like to think. It's just a little scary. Okay, so here's one of these boosters. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I've pretty much explained everything already. With hindsight, I think having the titanium gold and the regular gold right next to each other is not the best idea. I don't really, it doesn't look that great. I mean, it's okay, but wasn't expecting it to clash the way it does now. Okay, now, last part. This is only going to take a few seconds. It's practically assembled already. Because, here you go. Whoops, masking tape. And you take the masking tape off here. Just put this on for the top coat. Okay, so as you can see, this entire inner mechanism here that moves the boosters around is completely unpainted. I just didn't see the point, and I figured it wouldn't work anymore if I painted it. So I left it unpainted, just painted these bits the same way I painted everything else that's white. This is also basically invisible, so I didn't exactly do a whole lot to this. Okay, and this is kind of a train wreck. What I wanted to do is paint all these details black. What ended up happening is that it came out really messy. I think with all the streaking and the dry brushing, you can't really tell anymore, but I know it's there and it bugs me. There was also a fingerprint somewhere. I'm not going to tell you where because I covered it up with weathering, but I actually managed to get a fingerprint on this thing. Non-instruction mandated decals, again, because there just isn't enough detail on this. I thought about painting these fins a different color as well, and ended up not doing that. Also, oh yeah, the streaking here, that's Vallejo's engine grease. I did this on the wings as well. I think I forgot to mention that, but it's not that big of a deal. So all we do here is that we click this in place like as usual. I don't know how shit goes together. Damn it. Just please don't tell me this is in there upside down. That would be beyond awesome. Is that it? Yeah, okay, that's it. It's in. Okay. Yeah, that's the last part, actually. So now we get to final assembly. Do I do an edit? I'm going to do an edit, and you're not going to notice. Whoops. That was an edit. Okay, so these beam saber handle holders, which, by the way, you can see here at the top, they've probably got the most chipping out of anything, but of course, you know, the strike would be putting these things in and out of there all the time, so I really felt like it was kind of obvious that these needed to be heavily chipped. So let's see, what's the best order to do this in? The boosters. Go on like that, right? The other one, okay. The wings on top. Snap, okay. And finally, the beam sabers. Go here. Okay. Oh man, this is just going to get scraped off, isn't it? Okay, I'm just going to put them in very, very loosely. I didn't realize that. This is going to look like ass. Not good. Okay. That looks stupid too. But it's much too tight in there now. See, the paint's already getting scraped off. I'm just going to have to live with that. I mean, it's either that or they're never coming back out. Okay. So, done. Here's the Aile Striker all put together. Of course, this thing is huge, and I can't really fit it all in the shot anymore. You can actually still kind of see the decals I put here, which that makes me happy. You can also see the unpainted lever part there, but oh well. Yeah, that came out really nice. So you know what that means. We're going to put this on the suit, and I'm going to see if I can at least give you a halfway decent shot of it on the turntable. But other than that, we're done. Yeah. Sorry about the gray frame, folks, but this is the best I can do, to be honest. This thing is freaking huge, and I couldn't cover everything up in the background, so this is what we've got. I've got some panning shots coming up as well that are going to look a little better, but anyway, I don't really know what to say anymore at this point. I've talked about this kit a lot. I've been working on it since February, and to be honest, part of me is just glad I'm done and it's over. I'm definitely calling this done. I was going to paint the base too, and I might come back eventually and do that, but for now, I'm just sick of working on this, and I just want it to be over. I'm also still thinking I might do something about the fact that these beam saber handles don't fit in where they're supposed to fit in. Problem is, of course, if I, sand those out now that they've been painted, they might look crappy afterwards. So I don't know what I'm going to do about that. I'm also still going to do a proper full-blown photo shoot with better lighting and really try to, get the most out of this, and then have a long write-up coming up for my blog. But that's not going to happen until probably the second half of August, I figure. In the meantime, here's some footage of my PG Aile Strike, guys. As sick as I am of working on it, I'm certainly happy with the way it's come out. This is definitely far and away the best build I've ever done. I've stuffed every single technique I've learned into this build, and learned a few new things along the way. I'm already also, of course, seeing things that I wish I could go back and change. But that just means that I've also learned something from this. And yeah, as for the kit itself, I cannot recommend it enough. I really can't. It's one of the, if not the most fun kit that I've ever worked on. It looks awesome just out of the box, and it's so much fun to paint because there's all this awesome detail that you can work with to really make things pop. And yeah, it's just great. And it's superposable, it's solid. I had a few parts fit problems with the torso, but other than that, everything goes together really smoothly. It's just all around a fantastic kit. The strike itself, that is, the Aile Striker, like I said earlier in the video, I was a little disappointed with the amount of detail on that just out of the box. It really could have done with a bit more part separation. You can fix all that with masking, but for something that's sold as an add-on to a PG kit, I think it's a little disappointing. Speaking of which, I've also snapped together the Sky Grasper, and I will eventually paint that because it actually turns out I like it more than I thought I would. But for now, man, I just want to work on something else. I really do. So yeah, I'm gonna call this one done for now. Anyway, that's it for this one, guys. I certainly had fun making this one. I hope you had fun watching. I have no idea what's next, but I'm gonna keep model kittening, so stay tuned.